Namaste. I would like to introduce you Professor ECG Sudarshan. In the field of science, he needs no introduction, particularly for the people of Prashanti and people who are interested in the field of yoga and science. Professor Sudarshan is a well-known name, especially those who have attended the conferences of Prashanti Kutiram, Vivekananda Yoga Research Foundation, and also the audience of Yoga Bharati. Sudarshan's name is something which is very often quoted, very often seen in his pictures. So we are very, very fortunate to have Professor Sudarshan with us today and giving us a few glimpses about the most beloved person in his heart and also in our hearts. That's what is Professor A Satyanarayana Sastri. Namaste, Professor Sudarshan ji. Thank you. In fact, it's very amazing to see that you would come all the way from USA to meet with Professor Sastri, spend your time with him along with your family, and you always cherished as the most cherishable moments. How and where you first met Professor Sastri?
I met him first along with Dr. Nagaratna and his Dr. Nagendra. Dr. Nagendra was on the faculty at the Indian Institute of Science, and I used to be there, and I had started a small center called Center for Theoretical Studies.
Oh, okay.
And so we used to meet every now and then, and then I found that along with Shastriji, we had long conversations at her aunt's house in, where was it?
Lakshmi Ji's. In
Chamrajpet. Chamrajpet.
Okay.
That was the name I was forgetting.
Okay.
Chamrajpet. And I remember sitting on the veranda and on the half wall, sitting and talking and drinking tea and talking and talking and talking.
Wow.
And it was amazing to see a person like Shastriji, who appears to be so otherworldly, being so very precise. He, like a mathematician talking about statements of mathematical theorems, he was very precise. There was nothing that you could be ambiguous about the things, which also meant that when you talk to him, you have to be very careful, because if you used some Americanism, that would not be forgiven. He would insist you must clarify the thing. And this was very interesting. A chemist who seems to be a Vedantin and who makes such precise statements. But I have always found that these precisions, like the mathematicians always say, they are precise because they want to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want to be misunderstood. They want to be understood. We always say that, why do you say this thing, complicated things, in this fashion? There was a professor of mathematics at Tata Institute who used to teach a course on modern algebra. And once I remember he saying that a proposition is a two-valued mapping from a statement to truth or falsity. Instead of saying that either something is true or not. But it was that kind of precision. And I came to enjoy it very much, because when you talk about Vedanta with many people, you really have to define what you are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Here there was no such question. You ask a question and there was the answer. And what is worse, he knew the answers to almost all questions.
Wow.
And that is amazing, because previously even people who are knowledgeable, when you talk to them about these esoteric subjects, it tends to wander.
Mm-hmm.
A broad statement rather than something precise. But in his case, it was very, very, very nice.
Mm.
And once I met him, accidentally or so, we found all kinds of occasions to meet together.
Right. It looked like as if you were of similar kind of psychology, and the precision in approach and in
But
exploring the
his
things.
was amazing. I mean, I like to think I am precise when I want to be, but I don't always want to be precise. But in his case, he always wanted to be precise.
In your perception, that one thing that Shastriji very often he used to use is that the creation aspect of it, when he talked about the way from the Vedanta puts it, he brings about the idea of the in the differential equations, where it is that delta is the first slip from x, delta x, and from there the further division has taken place and the creation has taken place. So, in fact, I felt that was really fascinating when somebody could see that kind of an equation in the science and equation between science and philosophy. So, how do you respond to that kind of?
Well, for example, with regard to physics, all physics talks about motion, dynamics. How can dynamics come until you talk about the infinitesimal displacement from initial position? And you must characterize the thing, and the statement is that once you characterize it, everything else is characterized.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So, it is in the nature of definition of physics that precision is there. And mathematicians have, of course, been very good because they have nothing else to do. They made the language more precise.
Right.
And they also found fault with physicists who used slightly sloppy language.
These days, there are so many physicists, scientists, they are talking about, not only physicists, even the biologists and all that, they are talking about the consciousness, about the quantum mechanics and all those things. So, in your view, that the way that you saw Shastriji, so how does your ideas match with Shastriji? And you also have written a book in that area.
Yeah, I have, but not very seriously. I mean, no comparison with what I write and what Shastriji spoke. Because if he wrote something, it would have been absolutely Upanishadic.
Wow.
The one thing I can say in general about scientists writing about philosophy, particularly consciousness, is that almost all of it is nonsense. Nonsense in the sense that they don't even know what they are talking about.
Okay.
Not that they cannot communicate. There are many great minds who cannot speak if their life depended on it. But in many cases, people talk about it, and I mentioned two names whom you know. One is Roger Penrose.
Roger Penrose.
Who has written extensively and very seriously about it. Except that I don't think it contains anything that I appreciate as relevant. It is not a matter of his passing fancy. It is something that he has been working on for a long time.
Right.
The other one is our friend Goswami, Amit Goswami. Amit Goswami writes beautifully. Very much like Sir James Jeans wrote about modern physics at a certain time. Poetic, but without precision. While when Eddington wrote, or when Schrodinger wrote about borderline subjects, they were absolutely precise. And another person who is the late Eugene Wigner, when he talked about physics or mathematics, it was always precise.
Wonderful.
And it was to the point.
Yes.
And so, in general, there is a tendency for people with sufficient amount of reputation and following to be able to be loose with truth.
Yes.
Not they want to misrepresent things, but they have the idea and they don't know how to communicate it. We all have these problems. Every now and then we know some ideas that, for example, recently I told her, I had this great insight into something that I was worrying about. And I tried to convince her, and she said, yeah, that sounds very interesting, but now tell me a little more. I could not quite communicate with her that I have solved a problem which I thought existed, because she said there was no such problem. But she's usually more docile.
Yeah, compassionate to you. In fact, in one of the um, meetings that I attended, where you were talking to some of the top scientists of the country in NIAS, and that day we had a party, and then myself and Nagendra Nagaratna, we were there, and you were really in your ecstatic way when you expressed about Shastriji.
Yeah, right.
What really
Right.
impressed so much that you had to speak to scientists? Like, here is a man that you have to really recognize. That's what is the kind of thing that was expression.
You see, the point is that if you value precision, you value precision in other people even more when they are doing it.
Right.
And you get very upset with people who play as if they are talking seriously, but it turns out that they are not. And Goswami is my good example. Nice, lovable person.
Right.
But cannot
Count on that.
trust him as far as you can throw him.
And you also remember that you took Shastriji to, specially recommended him to be at the conference in Bangalore on one occasion, in one of the royal places, and then also to Kashmir, Srinagar, that you had a conference. So, what was your idea of bringing Shastriji to the people?
Well, I thought here was a man who was, who had scientific training, had the Vedantic training,
Right.
but who was also precise with regard to language. After all, we all studied English very carefully, and we appreciate when somebody speaks precisely. In his case, he spoke precisely in more than one language. Another person whom I love very much is my friend Dr. Verma.
Oh, yeah.
Verma.
Yes.
Verma had ideas. Unfortunately, he did not have the discipline to sharpen the ideas. But I have always enjoyed talking to him because you talk to him for 2 minutes and then later on he will tell you 5 days later that I thought about that. That's very interesting. So let us look into it. And the first time I met him, it was at a meeting at the Institute of Science, and we were at a meeting, and meeting was this person. He said, I have to go now, but I would like to meet you and talk to you. And we started saying this, and then we talked for about 50 minutes, just standing, because he was saying, I have to go, because he was a practicing surgeon at that time. But in his case also, I found that even though this language was not very precise, his ideas were very precise. And most people found him to be wandering around with ideas, but I found him to be very nice.
Okay.
So it is not the precision of the language as a professional polished thing, but the precision of the mind which comes in.
Right. Whenever you, Shastriji, and Verma were there, it was like a delight for all of us youngsters those days, just to get every drop of the nectar that was coming out. Wonderful.
That meeting in Jammu was a very interesting meeting because Dr. Karan Singh wanted us to meet there because he said that he would like us to be his guests. So we went there, and there was one incident which was very interesting. Swami Chinmayananda wandered in because he did not know we were having a meeting, but he wanted to see Karan Singh. So Karan Singh said, why don't you come in, Swamiji, that there are a number of people who are interested. And he gave a little talk. It was, Swami Chinmayananda was a beautiful man, and I loved him and respected him, but he was not very precise. That did not matter because when the matter came down to the things, you could ask him a question and he will answer. But
that was good.
One of the things was that at that meeting he said the usual thing that in Vedanta there are 3 stages. There is when you climb the hill, And the point was that Advaita Vedanta was the highest, and etc., etc. Which was not a very appropriate thing to talk to us, because we were all, in some sense, serious experts. And so Shastriji gave him a run for the money. And, once he gets hold of something, he's not going to let go. And at the end of the thing, we had some tea break, and so I asked Swamiji, I would like to ask a question. I will ask it in Malayalam so that if it's inappropriate, we shall not discuss it with anybody else. So he said, please ask as much as you want. And that made my friendship with him, because if a person at such a high elevation can say, you can talk anything you want. So one other question I asked was, when you said these things, I have heard this many other people say it, and I don't respect them very much. But in your case, I am wondering, is this your experience or you have heard about it? He said, part of it is my experience, and you would have recognized which is my experience.
Okay.
I said, I cannot judge you. How can I? But this was the kind of question that was there when Shastriji was present. You can ask questions which are outrageous, but yet very sincere and very serious.
Yes.
And it got a good answer.
So, anything else that you would like to say because now this book has come of the talks of Shastriji. We would like to take the message of Shastriji to the people. So anything that you would like to say?
Well, one of the things is that I wish I could be precise like him. in all things, including things like Vedanta, where things are, in some sense, everybody knows and nobody knows. Nobody makes the precision important. If it is a mathematical proof, somebody would say, no, does not follow. But when it comes to Vedanta, anything goes. We are such a permissive nation, so highly sophisticated, that in fact, we don't think that you must make it precise.
Right. I think that's what a wonderful message to the people who follow the book of Shastriji, to see that that is the language that Shastriji speaks about in his talks.
And it was not an affectation, or it was not a particular thing. It was the way he talked about everybody. And like you said about small children, if he talked to a child, he would talk with exactly the same precision.
Right. And he was never dismissive of anybody, any question like that. Oh, thank you, Sudarshanji. That was such a wonderful...
But I really dearly miss him, because it's not so much that I enjoyed meeting him, but in fact, he was such a presence.
He was such a person. Thank you so much for the nice, wonderful insight about Shastriji. Thank you. Namaste. Namaste, Prof A Satyanarayana. You are somebody who are associated with the VYASA even before it started. With the people who are associated with VYASA, like Professor Shastriji, Dr. Nagendra, Dr. Nagaratna, and also Lakshmi Auntie, who you so dearly remember. And also you would come to their house in Chamrajpet and live. So, how do you look at this institution in its growth, in its development, with Shastriji's wonderful vision behind it and Nagendraji's extraordinary wonderful effort behind this whole institution of VYASA University?
Well, in some ways it is quite characteristic of the founders. Dr. Nagaratna looks so simple.
Right.
And you are amazed at the number of qualifications that she has, and the degree to which she has been a mentor, a teacher, a guide, a friend, a physician to all kinds of people. And that characteristic, of course, I am not belittling other people. I am simply saying that she exemplifies, in a sense, excellence without attributes.
Right.
You don't have to recite her degrees or honors or thing to know that she knows.
Yes.
And when you meet her, you feel that you're blessed that you're meeting her. And in some ways, the growth of the institution and Lakshmi Auntie's role in the thing is amazing, because Shastriji would have been always an exceptional person, but he is self-sufficient.
Right.
He is like the Lord in all his glory. I mean, there is no need for anybody else. But if somebody came, that is okay.
Yes.
But I knew Dr. Nagendra when he was Mr. Nagendra.
Yes.
And he has not changed very much.
Even becoming Guruji.
Becoming Guruji. I have great difficulty in calling him Guruji without appearing to be self-conscious with regard to the thing. But that does not matter. I mean, he is amazing because he seems to have so much energy.
Yes.
And so much breadth of things, in which yesterday we were talking about some prospects of starting these hydrogen reactions
Yes.
for energy production. And it is quite clear that he has thought about all these things, and he has even very concrete plans as to what is to be done. The missing thing that I find is that the physical sciences are very poor. Not that people don't respect physical science, but physical science is a hard taskmaster. You really have to apprentice to it with great attention before you can talk about it. Very much like mathematics or philosophy. We all think that anybody can talk about philosophy, but not everybody can make any sense out of it with regard to it. So, at the present time, the growth of the institution is phenomenal.
Right.
It is lopsided because in some sense, some areas are very well developed, the other areas are poorly developed. There is no poetry, there is no music or dance, except when there are performances.
Yes.
But the other day, you were not here, there was this presentation of Ishavasya's Upanishad.
Oh, yes.
And it was so fabulous. It sounded so original,
Right.
so contemporary, and yet in some sense true to the original. And that kind of precision is very good.
Right.
I wish that precision also would extend the physical
other
sciences.
areas.
Physical science. You see, philosophy was always a very woolly subject because there were good philosophers and not so good philosophers, and people who thought they were philosophers who were not. But in science and so on,
Yes.
it is not so. And the precision and the excellence in medicine
Right.
and yoga that is here is not transmitting itself to other areas.
Right.
And hopefully that it will come.
Right. In fact, that's one of the reasons why this place is more and more being identified as a therapy center rather than a science center.
Right.
Science of yoga and philosophy. Yes.
And they should listen to some of the talks, and then they will know. For example, this conference that we had a week ago, it was at the highest possible level.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And the number of people who were there had no audio-visual aids or anything like that, just a few little slides. But the point was that they had all the facts.
Wonderful.
And also they had a senate of other people of the same kind, so that they could talk to each other, and anyone could expose himself to severe criticism for the others.
Right.
And they were not afraid to do it. So that kind of thing can happen. We had this workshop about 2 years ago when I brought my European colleagues here. And that was how we sort of dealt with ourselves, except for Dr. Kulkarni.
Yeah.
And it was also a very interesting thing, very high level thing. So it is possible to do such things. There is nothing in the weather or the topography which prevents it from happening.
Right.
But it must happen.
It must happen. That's what it is. So, both in the field of medicine, in the field of science, and in the field of philosophy, that this center has a great potential to
Yes,
contribute.
certain potential, yeah.
And
After all, when Dr. Nagaratna started,
Yes.
she was a little girl who was minding her business.
Yes.
But she ran the clinic in town, came here and did all kinds of things.
Right.
And nobody would have said that this lady has a tremendous potential.
Yes. So,
And so, with regard to science also, there is no need that something extraordinary should happen.
Right.
But it would happen.
it would happen. So, all the courses now that are developed in the VYASA, in this university, and the training facilities that they have provided and all those things, I'm sure that is going to really pave way to these particular things.
Right, right.
In fact, I could see that over a period of time, the quality of students that we are getting is also really, really improving every year. So I think with that, probably this university will be able to do a lot to the contribution of the scientific thinking of Indian philosophy.
Of course, no university can be everything to everybody.
Yes.
But to have strength in 2 or 3 areas is very good.
So thank you so much for the wonderful ideas. And we really feel that our guidance of people like Sudarshan ji is always there with this institution, because it has to grow a long way to see that the Indian philosophy is brought to the forefront into the science. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Rakshasas and Yakshas they worship, whereas the Sattvic people worship the Devatas. So Devatas are the Sambhuti and the others are the Asambhuti. So that is but obvious. When you follow the Asambhuti Upasana, you get into Andhantamaha, you will get. But the second line, those people